This video is brought to you by Imprint. Today, Israel finds itself in a standoff with the UN. The US plans to deploy an anti-missile system and troops to Israel, and Poland's Prime Minister wants to suspend the right to asylum. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Monday the 14th of October 2024. Our main story today is about the increasingly tense relationship between Israel and the UN over alleged violations by the IDF against peacekeeping forces in southern Lebanon. On Monday, Israeli Energy Minister Eli Cohen accused the UN's peacekeeping force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, of being useless and failing to protect Israelis from Hezbollah attacks. He also called on the force to withdraw, saying if the UN cannot help, at least it should not interfere, and move its personnel from the combat zones. For context, on Sunday, UNIFIL said in a statement that 2 Israeli tanks forced entry at one of its positions close to the Israel-Lebanon border, and that they destroyed the position's main gate and forcibly entered the position. According to UNIFIL, soon after the tanks left, shells exploded 100 meters away, releasing smoke that blew across the base and caused 15 UN personnel to require treatment despite wearing gas masks. For its part, the IDF said Hezbollah militants had fired anti-tank missiles at Israeli troops very close to the UNIFIL outpost, wounding 25 Israeli soldiers, and that a tank that was helping to evacuate the casualties then backed into the post. The IDF also said it used a smokescreen to provide cover for the evacuation and that its actions posed no danger to the peacekeeping force. Following the attacks, a spokesperson for UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said, "The Secretary-General reiterates that UNIFIL personnel and its premises must never be targeted. Attacks against peacekeepers are in breach of international law. They may constitute a war crime." Then, hours later on Sunday evening, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Guterres in a video message, demanding the UN remove its peacekeepers from Lebanon, saying the IDF has requested this repeatedly and has met with repeated refusal, which has the effect of providing Hezbollah terrorists with human shields. This exchange is the latest in a series of standoffs between the Israeli government and the UN over Israel's conduct of its wars in both Gaza and Lebanon. For instance, last week, the UN Office for Human Rights released a new report noting that Israel had perpetrated a concerted policy to destroy Gaza's healthcare system, committing war crimes and the crime against humanity of extermination with relentless and deliberate attacks on medical personnel and facilities. Meanwhile, in a speech at the United Nations General Assembly last month, Netanyahu referred to the UN as a swamp of anti-Semitic bile and an anti-Israel flat earth society, saying it was willing to demonize the Jewish state on anything. There's more on the way, but remember to subscribe and ring the bell for more daily briefing tomorrow. Plus, if you want to support the channel like Silver Nuclear, then consider joining the TLDR Daily Membership Program for just $1.99. Sticking with news from Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon, the United States will send an advanced anti-missile system to Israel and deploy US troops alongside it, in a bid to bolster Israel's air defenses following Iran's missile attacks. US President Joe Biden said the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, or THAAD, was meant to defend Israel. A THAAD battery requires some 100 troops to operate it, according to Reuters, and the deployment of US troops to Israel is a rare occurrence outside of military exercises. The US military has not given a timeline for the deployment. On Sunday, a Hezbollah drone attack on an Israeli army base killed 4 soldiers and wounded 61, according to the Israeli military. Hezbollah's deadliest strike against Israel since the latter launched its invasion of Lebanon nearly 2 weeks ago. Israel's defense minister says the attack was being investigated and that lessons must be learned swiftly. Meanwhile, it's been a deadly few days in both Gaza and Lebanon. The Lebanese health ministry said 51 people were killed across the country by Israeli airstrikes on Sunday, while Gaza's health authorities said that 62 people were killed by Israeli strikes in the past 24 hours, including 4 that were killed when a strike started a fire at the Al-Aqsa hospital complex in central Gaza. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk started controversy on Saturday when he said that Poland planned to temporarily suspend the right to asylum and promised to reject any EU migration policies that would undermine Poland's security. Tusk's proposal, which is unlikely to comply with international humanitarian law, created unease in parts of his ruling coalition. Lawmakers from the centre-right Poland 2050 party joined the New Left in saying that Tusk was speaking only for his own civic coalition alliance and had not discussed the policy with his coalition partners. While Tusk has not expanded on exactly what the measure would look like, he pointed out that Finland introduced legislation in May to temporarily suspend asylum applications in May. Poland, Finland, and other countries on the EU's eastern frontier have been grappling with inflows of people, largely from the Middle East and Africa, crossing the border from Belarus and Russia, in what the EU has said is a deliberate attempt by the Putin and Lukashenko regimes to undermine it. Donald Tusk's new migration strategy has been placed by some in the wider context of next year's Polish presidential election, where his party will be hoping to take the presidency from its right-wing rival, the Law and Justice Party. In other news, South Korea says that North Korea is preparing to destroy the northern parts of the now defunct Inter-Korean road system as tensions between the two neighbouring countries continue to rise. A South Korean military spokesperson said that North Korean troops were camouflaged and working on the northern side of the border near the east and west coasts of the country. Destroying the roads would align with Kim Jong-un's push to cut ties with the South and affirm it as the North's principal enemy, scrapping a decades-long stated objective to seek a peaceful Korean unification. In a further escalation on Friday, North Korea accused South Korea of sending drones to drop a huge number of anti-North leaflets over the capital, Pyongyang, and later the North Korean military said it put 8 fully armed artillery stations at the border on standby to open fire. The South Korean military declined to say whether it had sent drones across the border and blamed the escalating dispute on North Korea's flying of balloons carrying bags of waste across the border into the south. With North Korea continuing its missile tests and nuclear program and adopting increasingly hostile rhetoric, and South Korea and the United States expanding their military drills and deepening their alliance, tensions on the Korean peninsula are at their highest point in years. And finally, in some uplifting news, we feature a section of images that have made it to the final of the 2024 Wildlife Comedy Awards. Out of nearly 9,000 submissions from photographers in 98 countries, jury selected 40 entries for the final round, with the winners to be announced on the 10th of December. Some of our favourites are the Alright Mate, Back Off, This Is My Bird by Andy Rouse, The Contemplative Chimpanzee by Arvin Mohandas, In Love by Andrea Rosado, I'll Tell You a Secret by Jan Piecha, and Song of the Zeisel by Kath Aegis. If you want to vote for your personal favourite, you can help select the People's Choice Award through the competition's website, linked in the video description. The vote is open until the 31st of October, so hop over and check it out if you fancy.